All right. All right. Thank you,
I'm
Matúš.
still am Roland Volt. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
well,
How did you end
said
the episode with the least English way of doing it possible?
It's-
I'm still am Roland
yeah.
Volt. You know
I
what?
was just thinking, you have been, Matúš has been, whatever, was.
I'm still
and I thought,
am.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
No, we forgot about you, Roland.
Welcome to the What's Your Baseline podcast, where we demystify enterprise architecture and business process management.
We're here to bring best practices and lessons learned from our years to your ears, as well as interviewing friends we met along the way on our professional journeys.
My name is Roland Volt, and I'm joined today by my co-host, James Levinson.
Hey, JM, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Roland. And how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm just waiting until the millions come in, book launch day and all those types. Yes. As of this recording, I have 2 pre-orders.
Ooh, congratulations. People want your book, apparently, for some reason. Or they saw the episode and they thought, hey, that does sound like a good idea. Maybe they just need some support when they're looking to do successful architecture implementation.
Ooh, I thought they need some support under the laptop, as I posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, so that the laptop is a little bit higher where we record.
Oh, boy. Well, listen, I use books for lots of different reasons, but here's the thing. I also use books as a way of helping to understand an industry that I love myself. And there's so much to know, and there's so little time to figure it out yourself. So besides reading books like yours, I'm really excited to get more of a clinic on some of the components of the field we call dear to us. So I got to tell you, Roland, I'm really excited for today's episode. Give you a little bit of a preview before we introduce our guest.
Oh, yeah. So what we were happy to acquire is a guest who actually runs something called Process Academy, who is somebody who teaches at universities, and all those fancy stuff. And we were thinking, because he's also a podcaster, right? And I was listening to one of his latest episodes where he and his 2 compatriots were discussing if BPM should be a topic in high school and if everyone should learn process management, which I found a very interesting conversation, even though one of his compatriots, Christoph, was a little bit salty at the end of the episode. So, but anyways, I'm happy to announce that we have Matúš Mala here. Matúš from the Drei Prozessphilosophen, the 3 Process Philosophers podcast. And Matúš, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to your episode to find out what we are going to talk about and how it's going to be. So happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. But before we get started with diving deep into the topic of the day, can you talk a little bit about you? Obviously, I gave the perfect introduction, but maybe you can fill some blanks in between, like who are you? What do you do in real life? What are your bucket list items?
Yeah, okay. So sure, no problem. So as you have told, I'm Matúš. So basically it's not normal name. So coming from Slovakia. So for those who doesn't know it, it's in Europe, in the east of Europe. So and it was in the past Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, not to confuse with Slovenia.
Right?
No,
not
different
to confuse
countries.
with Slovenia. So there are 2 different countries. Slovakia can play hockey, so that should be pretty easy for the Americans and Canadians. So we even won one of the world series. So from that side, Slovakia was not that bad in the past. Currently, we are a bit struggling. But we have got in last 3 years one number 1 pick we're just playing in Canada, in Montreal Canadiens. So from that side, I could be proud at least at this thing. Currently, I'm living in Germany and working in the BPM area since 15 years. I have studied math and informatic science, paired with basically education. So I can teach mathematics and informatics from all kind of schools to university. But I have decided not to do that. So from that side, I started working as software engineer, as a back-end full stack developer. So really Java, hardcore, everything what this was possible. working for one of the manufacturers here in Germany. So I've moved after my university to Munich. And after a couple of years, I've changed to consultant companies. I was just like, okay, now I want to see much more customers, not only working for the product company. And my first project was introduction of one of the biggest BPM use cases I have seen since then for one of the biggest bank here in Germany. And we have more than 40. We've got more than 40 people with big architecture team and a lot of big teams. In that time, working with Bosch Innovit, so it was in that time definitely on the top right corner in Gartner. And after a couple of years, I have seen Camunda be one of the first partner of Camunda here in Germany, and working like partner for them for I think 5 to 7 years. Then I have decided to quit and basically start my own company. But as life is going, it has changed. So Fleubel reached me out, and they convinced me to be like their business developer, tech lead for German market. And for me, it was just like, okay, I have to try it. I have to try my skills and be like evangelist for this kind of area. So I was working for Fleubel for 3.5, 4 years. And doing a lot of pre-sales and everything, so from that side. And in all of this time, I was always loving BPM. So that's something I still love. So I mean, if someone knows me, I can talk all the time, 24/7. So my wife doesn't like it, but I love BPM. So from that side,
That's why I invited you, Matúš, and not your wife, I'm pretty sure she's a very lovely lady and we would have a nice conversation. But unfortunately, the topic is you have to talk to the nerds.
Yeah, no, I like it. So from that side, and I have built something like, meetup in Munich and start to find out, okay, what are the other areas, not only the technical one. And I'm working on the university, so I somehow come back to my study. So I have so small docent place in the Technische University and in our Technische High School. So it's called a bit different in Germany, in Augsburg, but collaborating with a lot of others. So I've got master thesis in TUM and other universities. So, but from my side, so I'm just like, I would say pretty fanatical to be all BPM topics. So from technical to business oriented, everything you know and see.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know TUM, it's the Technical University Munich, one of the 5 big universities in Munich. Yeah, and way back when, and I just checked the calendar, it's so disappointing. It's literally 35 years ago, I started studying in Munich. So beautiful town. I'm a little bit jealous that you live there.
Yeah, and it's a kind of joke that I think is funny. It feels like a very German sense of humor to call your university a tomb. It's like, hey, everybody, let's go straight to the tomb.
It's spelled differently. It's spelled different. No, it's TU for Technical University, and then the M stands for Munich. And obviously, if it's in a different, well, anyways, you get the gist. Yes,
it's the technically already made bad. The tomb. I like to think of it as a funny way to call things. But I want to talk to you. You spoke a little bit about your passion, which we'll talk a lot about today. But just the last piece of the puzzle, what motivates you when you're not working? What's your fun off time hobby?
Yeah, so I pretty like sports. So I was playing football in the past. I was swimming in my school time. Currently, I'm doing a lot of bouldering. So I'm at least 3 times a week in the gym. And I love this sport. So it has somehow, after my injury with the knee and football, I've changed to bouldering, and that's like really helping me a lot. And currently that would be my biggest hobby. I'm doing really trainer. So I somehow not disappeared from the football because I have 2 kids, and currently I'm training the smaller one, and like volunteering, like football trainer, football for the Americans, the real one, so not the soccer.
The one that you play with feet? Yes.
Yeah. That sounds exciting, and also I know that it's been a long training day for you. But let's get to the real meat of what you do here and what you're here to talk about. So BPM is a really interesting topic. Obviously, for us, we spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I'd like to get your perspective first and foremost on the art of BPM. the scope of what you take a look at, and sort of how you've seen that scope evolve over your time working in the practice.
So what I hate is when people come and say BPM is pretty old, and it's not like funny and it's not like evolving and anything. And I'm just like, why? I mean, I see it completely different. So if you take a look in the past, I mean, BPM as it is, has a pretty long history. If you take, from the whole improvement in the process management, process automation, how Toyota has made it, and all others, the Six Sigma and total quality management and everything. It was just like, it takes a lot of time to improve. But if you take a look in the last 10 years, it's crazy amount of new topics, or RPA, process mining, process intelligence, hyperautomation, bots. So we got almost every single year 1 or 2 new hyper words, and you're just like, there's no other area where it's evolving like that. I mean, I'm not sure if it's evolving. So we are renaming the same thing all the time, and Gartner is helping a lot. But it's like I think this area is just like crazy complex, crazy funny, and basically all studies and everything is just targeting that for the digitalization we need BPM or we need hyperautomation or we need process intelligence. So you call it from all other areas, but it's like one of the most important, one of the most fascinating area what how it is evolving in the last 10 years, I would say.
Which is interesting because when you think about it, and you alluded to it, it has a bad rep, right? Bad reputation. So who in their mind would join the BPM club, right? Or to say it in a different way, how much kudos and acceptance do BPM people in organizations get?
Yeah.
Low, tiny, So, and I hope we get to this. It's like, okay, where does the discipline go? Because I agree with you. There's a lot of new things. There's a lot of change. And yes, there's a lot of new words, which mean the old stuff. But there is some dynamic in there, right? And I agree with you. I find it fascinating, But coming back to this, you mentioned all those terms. Where do you see the ship going? I remember like 12 years ago, 15 years ago, BPM was automation, right? Before that, when I started, it was the management discipline, Where do you see BPM, if you would throw that term at somebody, where would you see that today?
I would say the BPM is something like basics for everything. So I really think in last time a lot about if you have something, if you are thinking about digitalization, or a lot of, there is nothing where you are not using some kind of smart device or anything where there is a piece of software. And if you are connecting the software, transforming the data and whatsoever, then I would say, you have processes. I think there are a couple of things where you say the processes are the core of the companies. So, and if you are thinking like that, then you have BPM everywhere. And so if you are thinking far in this direction, you have BPM even in your life, or because you are somehow structuring your life, either like cases or like processes, because you're doing a whole day of work and everything is like this. So from that side, I'm currently really thinking pretty hardcore that you have processes and BPM everywhere. So from that side, from that perspective, we need to change our mindset and say, okay, if BPM is something like basics for everything we are doing in the future, then we have to change something how we are going to work with these methodics. So that's where I'm currently really thinking about how what should I do? What should I do? So maybe from my my intro, I have forgotten 2 things. So I'm currently not working with Label anymore because I have started a startup for the Process Academy, and the reason was that I just said, okay, I'm doing 5 projects parallel. You guys know it because we are doing the same thing. And I was on one time like, okay, that's not where I'm helping. So if I want to help, I need to educate people, or I need to change something, because I cannot scale to 10 projects. So it's just not possible. And even in 5 projects, you are thinking about, am I really value for this project, or I'm just like jumping the problem? So from my position, it was just like I was like firewall man, like going to the projects, and all the time you comes if the team is doing something wrong or need the help, then they just call me. Can you come for 2, 3, 4, 5 days? And the thing is, if guys like us, and that's like really, if guys like us, which are working 10, 15 years in this area, wants to change something, then we are not changing it if we are part of the projects. But we have to think, okay, how are we going to evolve other people to be as good as we are, or maybe even better? So that's the question, and I want to solve this question. That's my idea.
Yeah, I think that was something we talked about a little bit with Carlisle. Man, that was a long time ago, but highlighting how little formalized education at a post-secondary level there was for, in his case, the EA discipline. But I see that too. Matúš, in Canada, when I went through my master's in engineering, there were almost, I would say maybe 1 or 2 out of all the courses at engineering college that had anything close to BPM as a specific topic. And even at that, it was maybe 1 module in a multi-module like course. The exposure was quite low. And I happenstanced across BPM because I needed to use it as a mechanism for documenting literal physical processes on manufacturing lines. But I wouldn't have necessarily come across it like prescriptively. And so I feel like a lot of people I see in this discipline have a similar story. I learned BPM, I learned the principles, I learned the mechanisms of it on the job.
Yeah.
And that feels like a big miss. I mean, tell me, where do you see any success in at least the initialization of BPM prior to entering the workforce?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about that, so I was doing a conference talk in this area, and it was just like, I have started 12 years ago, and they just throw me in the water and say that's the BPM project, and you're going to do that. But I was not alone. I was part of the big team. We have a couple of architects and everything. So now I've just like started. In that time, BPM was just like, there is something like BPMS. They are not really good, so they was really struggling. So the project was 2 or 3 years. So he was learning a lot, doing a conception. There was no agile, so it was like waterfall. So it was everything you are going 3 years through all of the projects, learning BPM, learning something like XML transformations because those engines was working with some kind of this, learning BPMN, learning why the heck the BPMN has evolved. I mean, that was pretty new in that time. DMN was new, so it was just like all of the new things, and you have 12 years of evolution, or because then Camunda has found out, or Activity, whatever, has found out, okay, we can make a Java-based engine that would be much more easier like XML and not this big. And then you have just used that one, then some others come with, okay, we need case management. And all the time was just like coming slowly, so it's like, if you take it 12 years of evolution is like 12 years for football is a long time. So you can learn a lot, but it's not possible now. And what's changing right now, so in the past, as I've started on the university, it was just like you have 1 or 2 semesters, and the things you have to learn them is there is BPM, it is a management discipline like Roland et al. But you said, okay, that was not really working, this 90-degree skip, or we have to change all of our organizations. I mean, the idea is really great, but nobody was just like working with it. And then you just like learning, okay, we have a couple of principles. Here's something like BPMN, here's something like EPKs in the time and whatever. And that was like pretty cool for 1 or 2 semesters. Then later on, you have started to automate it, and then you was starting. Right now, you have AI, you have RPA, you have process mining and everything. And what's happening is not even those bases are learned, because what the docents just like pick one of those topics, learn this topic, learn it a bit, and the people are going outside doesn't know what is BPMN, doesn't know what is modeling, doesn't know any basics.
But isn't it, and maybe that's the old guy who's doing it for almost 30 years, that tells you how old I am. But isn't it that you need to decelerate a little bit? Because I get the impression that people in our industry running around like headless chicken. Oh, there's that new shiny thing and we need to jump on it. So I honestly need somebody explain to me what AI actually can do. Right. Not that
Yeah.
I know the principles, but it's like, oh, it's the same buzz like in the 2000s when everybody said, oh, we need to standardize ERP systems, harmonize, harmonize, harmonize. Or in the 90s where everybody said, oh, we need best of breed, and I see those trends going through and I'm thinking, wait a sec, there's some fundamentals underneath, right? And the way how I rationalize it is basically going through the life cycle, right?
Yeah.
So just a little refresher, 5 phases, design and execution in my mind, where you have that high level strategy, alignment exercise, figuring out what's wrong, so all those things to say, okay, this is where we want to spend effort, people, time, resources, money, whatever on, right?
Yeah.
And then you go into the next one and you do a proper design, right? So this is where much I think you need things like BPMN, right? You need to have the technical understanding to say, yep, I want to bring a solution to life. And then you go into the implementation, and this is where your data transformation and coding and all that stuff comes in, and people need to learn how does a software development lifecycle look like? Why should you test your stuff? It's always fun to test in prod. And then you need to monitor the execution,
Yeah.
right, and interact with it if something goes south. And then at some point in time, you go to the last phase. You take a step back. You use your wonderful, fancy process mining, task mining, whatever tools you have, and you try to find patterns and additional improvement opportunities to start that circle all over. This is something that you can teach people because it doesn't
Sure.
matter if the technology now is this fancy thing and the shiny thing. I see that pattern repeating over and over again with a different flavor and a lot of hype and a lot of marketing around it. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about what you've seen with that lens as the state of education, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Maybe in the European Union. I don't know if you have insights in the Americas, but I'd be curious to get your perspective on what you see for the next generation, because it's not us old farts, right? It's the next generation that's important.
Yeah. So basically, I'm absolutely on your side. You have either the possibility to make it slower,
Mhm.
but that does mean that you have to learn much more in this area. Or I
Mhm.
mean, slower means that you are just having education. So specialties where you can learn it for not 2 semesters or 1 semester, but you have maybe 6, 7, 8, or specialized BPM education or process architecture, EA and BPM, whatever. Or you have to start with something like education after you are working, which is just not working. So, and those are the 2 possibilities. So starting earlier or life learning. And as you was talking, I was just like thinking, in the past it was easy because I was outside of my school, and then I just doesn't know anything. I have a lot of time to read, or I can learn for 2 years Java. The news was coming like with the magazines. I mean, the new people doesn't know that was something like that. And Java magazine was just like once a month. So we have got the news every single month, not even every single week. So it was, how often was new releases of software? Once a year, once a 2 year. I mean, Sun was not the best one in that thing. So if we take a look how this was evolving, and now you are just like the news, the possibilities, and whatever is coming much more faster. So you have to learn. I would say forever. So that's the first thing. That's
Yeah.
the crazy thing. So that people have to accept after I'm at school and after I have made, my, you have had this approach from, okay, I'm not junior anymore, so now I'm professional. I
Mhm.
doesn't have to learn anymore. So I can just work like this for next 30 years. So you just forgot it. So you have to learn till you are not working anymore. And from this area, you have to really change something in the education. And I don't think there is currently this mindset. So currently we are more or less educating specialists.
Yeah.
Something like designer, something like front-end developer, whatsoever. But what you was talking about, it's evolution of the architect. But you cannot educate architect in 3 years. That's just not working. Because it's just complex. It's like this T-shape. And for T-shape, you need this, you need start somewhere. So T-shape is not working if you are just like, bottom shape. So
Yeah, you need to
cannot
be in
just
the
go in
yeah, you
all
need to be in the
areas and doesn't have
trenches.
your specialty.
Yeah, you
Then-
need to be in the trenches and have done it.
I know that when I was working in management consulting, and we were doing like things like process capture facilitation, war room sessions. We've all stood next to sticky notes and thrown them on the board. I got to tell you, the average age and experience and salary cost of the people who facilitate those sessions is unnecessarily high. And I think it's primarily because we don't make learning BPM two things. One is sexy for people who aren't looking for a future job prospect. They're learning sexier topics. They're being told to learn more technology topics that are focused on like the current state or future state of how the implementation is going to work, but not necessarily how the design is going to come about. That's number one. Number two is I think that BPM is not sexy for people because they don't realize the impact it has on organizations. So like I would like to go and say, oh, I see this like multi-billion-dollar fine against this institution, or this reputational damage that came about as a result of a data leak, or something happened with the planes and they flipped over by mistake. There's some issues there, and be able to say, hey, everybody, some component of this that you see has to do, probably in some capacity, with the way processes are executed. And so what you're seeing on the news is actually part of a discipline that we can train you on. Hey, wouldn't you like to be the kind of person who solves problems like that before they come up? BPM may be a home for you, but we don't say that. Here's another sort of level lower. How often do we talk about business process at a high school level? Zero. I never heard the words business process until I was in university and pretty late on. So there's no pipeline that leads people who are interested in figuring out sort of the architecture of organizations, the structure of systems, the way in which processes are laid out to flow from end to end. We don't even talk about that at a level that would inspire people to pursue it, which means there's nothing for them to use. And to me, it seems a little bit of chicken and egg, because if no one's asking for it, then post-secondary education institutions have no reason to do it, and which means companies are still going to be forced over and over again to on-the-job train their employees.
Yeah.
Matúš, where do you see this cycle breaking? Like, what's the first sort of domino to fall to create an effective pipeline from potential candidates in BPM to the right education, to the right job?
I would say that if you just dismiss the BPM, that would be the start. So I think what's at least happening in Germany and Europe, I would say. So I know at least 3 different countries and the studies there. So what the young people in the high schools are learning is like start computer, use Excel, and then somehow they are starting to program, to write a code. And it's just like, it's really looking like, okay, there is IT, so we have to create something like a fast solution. So there's not the way. So I mean, basically, if we all think that BPM is base of it, then it's something like completely new area. So IT or digitalization, whatsoever, should be started as soon as possible. And I would not, make difference between, are we going to learn programming or BPM or whatsoever? I will make it like the bottom layer of this. So everything what you are going to do in your life is part of the processes, or it doesn't have to be business processes, could be technical, whatever. And therefore, we need to educate the people what the process is meaning, what work in the process meaning, what are the tasks and whatever. And for the technical guys, then you can, enhance it and start to work on the program if they want. But we need to educate all of them. Because the problem of guys like us, or problem from guys like Ronald has told, if you have a company, you have 2 BPM guys, is this kind of, they are some kind only there for auditor. But the problem to change this is because 98% in the company doesn't understand what they are doing. But all of them are doing processes. So I mean, If we educate all of them, at least on some bottom layer, and say, okay, if they understand that we need to think about, okay, there's something like end to end, something like that, then you just need to go there, or?
Well, that's a really good point here. And I think we want to take a moment to think about that a little bit more with our audience because, if people don't understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's really hard to convince them that what you're doing is important. And it's even harder to convince somebody to learn what you do because the end point doesn't seem like it's valuable. So I want to turn it back on our audience. I'm particularly thinking about practitioners who are listening to this podcast. How did you get started with BPM? What was your first taste of the discipline? What was it called to you? How was it pitched? And why did you choose to pursue a life that had some component of BPM in it? We'll leave you for a moment and then come back with our second section, a more in-depth look into how we might change the trend on BPM education.
The wind will blow, but it's just changing. It's just changing. The wind will blow, but it's just changing. It's just changing. The wind will blow, but it's just changing. Just changing.
And welcome back. Matúš, very interesting perspective that you have on BPM. And we had a little side conversation in the little break while our audience was listening to the wonderful music of Jeffrey. The thing that came to my mind is, I think it's twofold, is the question, do we have a marketing problem with BPM or architecture in general, or how do we create the awareness within organizations for this? Because what I see is when I think about the young kids going to college, what is their motivation? Oh, I want to become rich and whatever, right? What is the best study that I can have? Oh, I study business administration or I study some technology, because that's in. Nobody, JM, I think you can agree, nobody will study the humanistic stuff, music and all that stuff. I heard that's very well paying. But
I wish,
think,
my friend, I wish.
how do you, well, yes. How do you create that awareness? Because I agree with what you said just before the break. At some point in time, you have to become T-shaped, a specialist. Those Japanese concepts of pride in your work, 10,000 hours to become a master of this. And then you see those beautiful swords and papers that those Japanese craftsmen do, which is awesome, So at some point in time, you need to go deep to get that expertise. So where do you see the problem with BPM? Is it marketing? Is it just the awareness? Is it the too early specialization? Where do you see the hook to improve the situation?
Yeah, I would say awareness at the beginning. Awareness that it's everywhere, even if you don't think that you have processes. I mean, there are a lot of guys, say that doesn't have them. So that would be awareness. Marketing definitely as well. Because as soon as someone say, okay, we need to have BPM because somebody has told it. I mean, that's how it's working, at least in Europe, that you have some kind of auditors and whatsoever, ISOs and, all of these kind of things. Then you are thinking about, okay, what should we do to get this kind of certification or this kind of whatsoever? And then the answer is, yeah, you need to do a BPM because you need to describe your processes or document it. And then it's just like this unsexy topic how JM has told. But at the end of the day, if the awareness is just like those processes were there even before you are starting to, document them, that would be the awareness thing. So, I mean, there's definitely awareness that all companies are working with processes and they are documenting them firstly as soon as they need the certification. But the companies which are currently most successful are companies which are really working hardly on their processes. Or if you take a look at Amazon, they've just changed the way how we are buying stuff. Or The process, how we are doing all of the things, the process is how they are connecting the sellers and the buyers. If you take a look at PayPal, I mean, that was one of the first digital paying system. They have just changed the process. And if you take a look at all of other stuff like Spotify, whatever, they have changed the processes. And so companies which are aware that they need to change the process instead of having the best technology or having the best use case, whatever, are currently the most successful, I would say. So that would be the awareness and marketing after all. And that's why I'm saying, maybe the BPM is just like these three syllables are just like, unsexy, but we need this, and we need the awareness and marketing for it, that all of people are part of the process. And what, you have made the second intro, and the thing is, I'm still not like, I doesn't have answer for you. I'm still like, it's changing and it's evolving with every single discussion with all of you guys. So, and you was talking, I was just like thinking, why the heck are we here? And if you take a look, what we have done in last 50 years is like, we have tried to make perfect single job, which is just like disallowing the people to know which part of the process they are. Because if you only do stuff like unpack element from package in the grocery store, and you make all the time the same job, then you just doesn't know, okay, maybe the package is coming from somewhere, somebody is buying it. At the end of the day, the buyer is paying the money, and the money you just get for your work, So it's like, you're not thinking that you are part of the process somewhere in the middle, because we have just like really perfect work on the, optimizing this kind of stuff. If you take a look in the past, the whole farmers and everyone, they are not working like that. So they are not just like picking the eyes or picking the things. That they know they have to, start the day with, okay, we have animals, we have to go to them, we have to give them a meat and whatever. So you are thinking the processes. Those are definitely thinking processes. So they need to get everything to be able to have these animals for a couple of years, whatever. So maybe we have just changed the way how the people are working in the last 50 years in the industrialization, and we have somehow forgotten to tell them, we need you to do this job perfectly, to do your task perfectly, which are we currently trying to automate, but you are part of the process.
So are you advocating, and I'm a big fan of those, whatever, farm to fork, farm to table things, that you have the end to end, right? Literally starting with the end of the poor animal and ending up on your plate. I'm a big fan of that. But one could say, well, the industrialized means of production that we have enabled us to grow so quickly and have the big benefits for everyone and lift people from poverty and all that type of stuff, which is also debatable. But anyways, so one could make that argument, right? So are you proposing to going back to that more holistic view, or are you seeing a potential for combining this, or how would you bring this in your example, the warehouse worker, right?
Yeah.
How do you bring that?
But now is the question. So now we are in the robotic era, I would say. We could say robotic era. So not the RPA, but so we have manual workers which are doing stuff like assembling something together, or just picking some stuff and getting it somewhere others. So, and currently a lot of companies are working on robots which can do the same job. So you are automating this kind of tasks. And then the question is, what the heck are going these people to do? So I'm absolutely on your side that through the industrialization and just like focusing on small tasks and doing this task as perfect as possible, we have grown insanely. Maybe we have forgot to tell the people, but you are still part of something bigger. So the question is, if we have not devolved, because the people are not thinking anymore, okay, there is something others, or I'm part of something. And as soon as these guys are not working like in this dummy task, because if you can automate it also, it was not bad task or whatever, but if you can just automate it with technical systems or robotics or whatever, then these jobs are going to disappear. And what are these people are going to do, and what are we going to do if this small task could be just automated? So we have to think maybe about, okay, how we can connect these 5 things, software, robots, whatsoever, to build something what you need. So you have to start to think about the process again.
Yeah, and I always want to think about motivation here, because you talk a lot about how these people are sort of isolated in their specializations, which was a very good mechanism of focusing on specific knowledge, and hyper specialization, meaning you have a lot better capacity to do a very specific and one task at a time. But we see also this incredible ennui in younger people. They don't feel like they're connected to things. They don't see the value in some of the work that they're doing. They're not incentivized to seek these sorts of jobs necessarily, because, and I maybe I'll make a sort of a waxing poetic statement here, but because they're not told why those jobs are important. They don't understand how they connect to the whole. And I like to use this phrase a lot: seeing the unbroken chain of influence between an individual action and an outcome that you tangibly want. So you're like, oh, I think that people should get their medication delivered to them when they can't get to the hospital to pick it up. My job is to take boxes that are open, close them, and tape them. But what it actually is I'm securing the product that is contained within this box so it can be effectively shipped to people who need it. And that need will fulfill one of their bodily requirements. Like, that's a pretty good purpose. But if all you think is I shut a box, I tape the box, and then I put the box on a conveyor belt, that's not a purpose. Like, the outcome of what you're doing is a closed box goes on a conveyor belt. So I think you talked a little bit about this before, but a big problem here is marketing. Like, you need to understand and market to people, give them awareness of what the value of their stage in the process is. And I think BPM is a good way of doing that. When you see the whole picture end to end, you can say, I'm part of a value chain rather than I am my task.
Yeah.
And that's a big marketing conversation about different parts of BPM as well. Because I think the other thing that we take a look at as a BPM discipline is, I feel like our marketing is bad to people looking to come into the field, because they miss a key component of it. Now, if you mind, I'll give you a little bit of a story here. I went back to my high school, and I gave a career day talk. And one of the key components that the high school was asking me to talk about is, talk to me about the employability of your discipline. I don't think we talk at all about the employability of BPM professionals to people who are looking to select the future career. Because the truth is, I don't know, 30 companies right now who are looking for BPM resources. And they can't find BPM specialists under the age of 30 for love or for money in a lot of cases. And for money, it means they end up paying, 1.5 times salary or 2 times salary on a resource as to what they really need. So now you're asking these BPM resources you're bringing in as juniors, who are actually really mid-level, to do so much more work because you can't have as many of them. Like, I want a bunch of bottom level, like, first job people to come into BPM, but because you can't find them, you can't have 20 of them. You can have 5. And suddenly now they're overworked. And now this is like a chain of failure, because we didn't do the work up front to say it's a great way to get a job, which means fewer people sought it out, which means fewer people got the jobs, which means the jobs are more expensive, which means ultimately everyone suffers.
So this is obviously an episode where we want to have our guest speak, but I have to interject here, JM, because do we go to the places where the young kids are? Do we talk the
We
way
should.
how they talk? Is there a BPM TikTok equivalent? No, it's not. It's like, and we go and say, oh, you should do this. Learn to draw rounded rectangles and arrows and circles. How sexy is that for a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old?
No, but you
Not
talk
at
about
all.
what we're doing. You learn to communicate, right? People do that all the time. People do that. You talk about TikTok for BPM. People learn to communicate on TikTok effectively, because communication is important to them. If we could connect BPM with communication as a viable, well-paying job for a lot of young people, that might change the game. And
Yeah.
Matúš, where you see people, younger people coming into the discipline, what motivated them? Like when you talk to people under the age of 30 ever who are in BPM, why are they there?
The discipline is complex. The question is why? Because it is not that complex. Or I mean, what are we doing at the end? So we are just like, if you start with the BPM, you just make something like a pizza process, or it's one of the most used process. Then you're just like doing, okay, how the pizza order process at whatever is doing. And I mean, everybody understand it. So from that perspective, BPM is not that hard. I mean, it's maybe hard to create a new process, but you can understand old process pretty fast. You can understand Amazon process, you can understand a lot of process, vacation process, or you have to order whatsoever. Someone is say, okay, approve, not approve, and so on. I think we are doing it much more harder as it is. Maybe that's why the young people think it's okay. It's complex topic, and yeah, a lot of time we need much more from them as, or we are trying to get much more from them as they can give us. So that's the situation you have talked about. Because if you have young people which was starting with the BPM, we cannot just say, okay, now you have to do mining with RPA, with automation, and document it with the proper BPMN and landscapes and 4 levels and whatsoever. And he's just like, what the heck? So it's like really too much.
I was just thinking, you listed all those things, and I was just putting my inner 20-year-old out. And I said, why? Why should I do this? Why should I do RPA? Why should I be interested? Why should I be interested in documenting this stuff? Why? I think we're failing on getting this out. And you and I spoke in the break about prices on apples. If you could revive that conversation a little bit, because I think that you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, so Roland has asked me how we want to, why we should learn the BPM, or how we should learn BPM on the high school, or how should we change the education. So that would be maybe much more interesting topics. And I'm still talking about how we are currently educating informatics, or the way how companies are working is just like wrong, because we are starting somehow with programming, and programming is just too complex for kids. And if you will change it, we are not really thinking about why the heck we are learning math, and if you are going to groceries, there are numbers everywhere. So and the people are not asking why the heck there are numbers. So they understand, okay, if I want to know how much I should pay, then I need the numbers on all of these grocery things, because at the end of the day, I have to evaluate if I have enough in my pocket. So that's how we are doing. So you are not getting a car if you have $100. So it's like, that's like what we are educating, because we know that it's basics. And similar is this from my perspective in the processes. So if you will start to educate even informatic digitalization on data and everything from this perspective, that there are a couple of dots which we are connecting, and these dots are working like that, and even using your smartphone, all kids are using smartphone, are doing something like processes, logging in, then starting writing email or writing whatever. You're even writing with your parents to get maybe money or get approval. I mean, they are not automating with BPMN, but automating through WhatsApp or other tools. With these kind of things. And if you just enable it there much easier, someday they will ask, okay, how is smartphone working? So then you can start, for those guys which want to understand it, how to write programs and everything. Other guys will maybe just want to understand, okay, why we are doing it like that. So what's the business case behind it? Why I'm asking it, And from that perspective, I will, I would say, if we take it like new, so I would definitely say it's like next to math and English language in your side and German in our, it would be the third most important thing. People would not ask. And one thing I want to add, you have told, this, you have picked even better processes I was. Take the grocery, pack it in the package, and just like make it done. That was the task for a lot of people for a long time. Those people are scared that they lost their job because there is something like new robot coming. So, and that's happening. Or, like for us, because we are in the software area, you get email, you open application, and you write down everything that was in the email. So it's like, I mean, that was common job. So currently you can use something, but this is going to be automated. Those are scared because they don't understand that, next to them on the left and right side, something is happening, so they could be part of this something, maybe somewhere other. And the young guys, on opposite, because you have thought, okay, they just doesn't want to work. Sure, they doesn't want to make work, but their smartphone is doing it, without any problem. So why the heck should you do it if all you see in your normal living is working without this dummy work? But what they are going to do, they want to connect the dots. And if you are talking about this kind, then they want to do processes. I would definitely say they want to create something new. They are pretty creative and they are motivated. They doesn't want to do dummy job, where in the past we need those people. So we need the people which are, part of the process of creation process and everything. It was insanely important, but currently we can automate it. So it's like somehow, so we have problem on the current workers, we have problem on the young people, because young people doesn't want to do this job because they doesn't see sense. And the other people are just like scared. But there are a lot of other possibilities connecting the dots that you can be part of other dot.
Yeah, I think there's a fallacy here, Matúš, and maybe you can weigh in on it a little bit, but I hear a lot of people say, like, we shouldn't optimize processes where people will potentially either have to do low value work or lose their job in low value work situations, because that takes away somebody's job. So why should you get a robot to do it? Why should you get an automation to do it? People are already doing that, and it's powering the economy. But I think that's a fallacy, because you're saying there's only two options. Option A is operate inefficiently, and option B is have a tremendous human cost for firing all the people who used to operate inefficiently. And there's an option C there, right? Like there has to be more than that going on. I see BPM as part of that puzzle, which is understanding the context and becoming more of a knowledge worker, or having a larger context in what you do, so that, yeah, sure, I installed, in my previous example, a robot that pushed the lids closed and a robot that taped the package, and then a pick and place that put it on the conveyor. But that doesn't mean somebody doesn't need to know why, or doesn't need to know how that fits into the context. I mean, tell me a little bit more about how you see changing the conversation from a fear-based one to an opportunity-based one.
Yeah, so I think it's like, it's like the same conversation in AI area. So it's similar. So we are currently in the change, and we just can take any change management book. And we are currently basically in this area where people are scared because they don't understand. At one point, if you just take this 10% of haters outside, or which are just like part of the change management, and you cannot convince them, you have to accept that something is changing. So we have to accept it. So there are a lot of jobs which are not here anymore. So in the Europe, there was people which was just like smelling gas in cities, or this kind of job is not here anymore. So the people are not there. This job just disappeared. So in the future, a couple of jobs will disappear again. So it would change. So we are in this change area. I say not it's in next year, it's maybe next 30 years, whatever. The problem is that the young people are not going to do this job. And so I cannot convince someone, coming from not even university, coming from high school, that, okay, we are adapting these jobs again. So we are going through the Munich and smelling if there is no gas. So why? There are a lot of sensors, man. Why should I do that? Or so it's like, in the future, if you have still this workforce which is there, and you have young people which doesn't want to be part of this workforce in the future, so this will change. The question is how we can help the people to be part of the new kind of possibilities and everything, to be part of the thinking, okay, what can I do now? How can I evolve? Because companies would need those people. It would not be like company with just 100,000 of people would have 200 next day or next year or next time. They will adapt new processes, create new possibilities. And there are a lot of studies currently. So we was talking one episode about that in next 10 years, that was not my idea, but somebody has really created a vision that young people in the future are going to be more connector of multiple technologies rather than implementing one technology. So they have to understand much more. But because of AI, so if we are making this analogy, AI will help them to be faster, but they have to know, okay, I need these 3, 4, 5 tools, and they have to connect them. So that would change, and that would change in all other areas as well.
In the current conditions that we live, right, a capitalistic system, right, there will always be change, because there will always be a way to optimize things more. And by definition, I don't want to put my inner Karl Marx out here, but by definition, if you're an employee, you're on the quote unquote losing side, right? So you will lose jobs. So there's one question is, how do you manage this? We've seen that. I remember when I grew up, when all the big German car manufacturers put in robots for welding and all that stuff. What happens to all those jobs, If you look from today's perspective, you say, of course, it made sense to do this, right? Or think about mining, all those miners which will be phased out, or fossil fuels in the future, right? Where there will always be change. I think that's the only constant that we have. So the question now is, and I truly believe that change, a big component of change, is understanding where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we get there, right? That's, to me, is process analysis, right? At least the bigger parts, and then some implementation. So I see that clear connection. But how do we get this thinking into the next generation to say, hey, don't be scared, right? You need to have some flexibility. You will not have, as you said, you will not have this job for the next 30, 40 years and then retire. Those times are over, right? But you can influence this. You can make it better. And what I see is that, and I would love, so if any professor listens to this show here, right, at this point in the game, I would love to have somebody reaching out to us and say, hey, I have this study program. It's 10 semesters, 12 semesters. We're going to start with basic accounting. Right. Oh, and then we talk about macro and microeconomics. And then we talk about this and this and this. And at the end, you end up with whatever, your Java stuff or whatever, right? But you have that holistic perspective on it and say, look what the common thing is that ties that all together, right?
Yeah.
It's producing something using a process. And that's how our capitalistic system works. And now you are prepared for this without being a deep expert in technology, ABC.
Yeah. So from my perspective, I will definitely challenge the way how we are currently educating on the high school, because we need young people to understand that anything they are using is part of the process. And if you start there, it would be much more easy to show them more and to motivate them maybe to be, experts in this analysis, optimization and everything. But it's or from the other side, they will understand that they are part of the process, and maybe people doesn't want anything from them if they're optimizing this process, So that would be maybe the long vision, but it's hard. Second one, which is much easier, but it's easier depending on the universities to create new universities areas or new university programs, like you have told. But what we are still forgetting is the current workforce, and they are scared. So we have to create, this education, re-education possibilities where you can just, convince them, okay, there's a lot of possibilities that you can do, just start to learn. It doesn't have to be something like you have to be 3 months in the school, because nobody from them wants to go to school back. Maybe you have to find out new styles. And it's happening, but it's happening not on the proper way. So you have a lot of YouTube content, you have a lot of podcasts, you have a lot of everything. But it's like, even in this podcast, they can learn a lot, I think. In other as well. So I'm, listening to podcasts pretty much. But it's like, we have to create something like new style of education, where you can start to maybe don't let that fast, as Ronald, you have told in the beginning. So maybe make it slower. And you can just, start right now, because, okay, my job is maybe in the future not that important anymore. So I now start to learn a couple of things. What is AI? What are data? What is whatever? And then you can decide on your own which area is your area where you want to evolve. And it's similar to if I'm using, Duolingo for learning languages. It's not like next year I need to speak that language. It's maybe like, I want to be able to order coffee in Italy, so it's like, and from this perspective, maybe you should have something like a new idea where you just, if Roland is coming to your company, okay, if I'm drinking coffee with him, I can at least understand what he's talking about. I doesn't have to be able to model it, but I can maybe talk with him. And that would be just great because then you just enhance the possibilities for all of the people.
I think that this is a really important point and a point to sort of stick the episode in, which is that we need to take action.
Yeah.
I don't think that this BPM as a discipline going underserved and underrecognized is going to solve itself. And ultimately, things are going to change. Roland, you brought that up a couple times. Like it's always the catalyst of capitalism will change us as long as we let it. And to be able to react to that, to be able to adapt to that, we need to have the right education at the right time to inspire people to pursue disciplines that will help to shape our future. And I think BPM is certainly one of them. And I want to turn it back to our audience here because we asked the first question, how do you get introduced to it? Now let's have you think about this. What would you want from an education program? What would you want from a pipeline of candidates for BPM? Would you want to see people at a younger age? What sort of information would they need to have? What would be most useful to you in helping to grow your awareness, grow your practice, and ultimately grow the outcomes of the organizations you work with and the causes you support? I mean, frankly, I use BPM for my charity as well. It's not like it's just for big business. So give it a second. Think about whether or not the practice needs a little bit of a boost in its educational presence and how that might look for you. We'll come back with our final thoughts and conclusions for the episode.
Won't let you down. Yeah. Hey, I need your love. Won't let you down. Hey, I need your love. Won't let you down. Won't let you down.
And welcome back. Hey, Matúš, I think that was a really very interesting conversation. Maybe a little bit meta for the old people who listen, because I think the big problem that we have is how do we generate interest for new people? But one part of it is communication. And the question is, Matúš, how can people reach you? Where can you be found if somebody listens to this episode and wants to have a deeper conversation with you?
Yeah, so it's the marketing part where I can sell something about me.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Hey, listen, everyone's got to make their money, right? Isn't that something you talked about today?
So thank you very much for that. So basically, you can find me on LinkedIn, so under this same name, and I think it's no problem. You can reach Ronaldo JM; they know me, so they can give you the contact. You can find me under the Proces Philosophen podcast, which I'm doing as well. And basically, we have created a non-profit organization for education, which is trying to solve this problem in the future. It's called Proces Academy. So just go on the web and find it. We have some kind of visions, but it's like not final, or so we are open for anyone who wants to collaborate, who wants to change something, who wants to learn something. And yeah, I would say to all of other guys, build communities, be open, create something, and then we can help all of the people, young as well as those which are working.
That's a great call to action. Create communities. And I think that's something that you've been doing really well. And I think it's something we're trying to do here with What's Your Baseline? So first and foremost, a thank you to our community members. My goodness, it's been a wonderful time to have Matúš on the show and to talk about some of the things that we care quite a lot about ourselves. Speaking of community, if you're following us here on LinkedIn, please make sure to like and comment, maybe share what you're hearing if you like it. We'd love to get more feedback. We love getting feedback and we respond to it, and we also shape our shows off of it. But if you'd like to, you can also go to what'syourbaseline.com, or specifically for this episode, what'syourbaseline.com/episode 87. But until we meet again, friends, I've been J.M. Erlandson.
I was Matúš Mala.
And I'm still M. Roland Volt.